Okay, thank you for the introduction, and let me also welcome you to the afternoon session. I'm going to present you some work I did together with my co-authors, Sebastian, Azita, Niloofar, and Mo and Max. And the title of the paper is CloudBits, Supporting Conversations Through Augmented Zero-Query Search Visualization. Let's get started. So, if we have a look at our everyday conversations, casual conversations and also formal conversations, we see that the existence of technology and the existence of technology in those conversations has changed the nature of those conversations. We always have our smartphones around, our tablets, our laptops, our smartwatches, and we constantly play with them, even during conversations with someone. And this obviously has an impact on the nature of our conversations. So what will we do? We use those smart devices for information retrieval, so for clarifying facts, for searching for related information. And after we retrieve this information, we use our devices to share this information with other persons that are in the conversation. So we show around the website that we just found. We show the nice, cute new cat picture that we found on the internet. And of course, this change of the nature of the conversations through technology has good sides and bad sides. This technology helps us to enrich conversations through additional content. And sometimes there are situations where this information retrieval and information sharing really helps us in conversations, because if you're planning some trip, for example, in situation you can check for prices, for places, for sightseeing and things like that. And this helps us, as I said, to enrich conversations. But of course there are also bad things, because if you constantly play with technology while you're in a conversation, you need to switch your cognitive focus between the conversation on the one side and the technology and the process of information retrieval on the other side. And this can, of course, hamper the flow of the conversation. And sometimes people even favor the interaction with the smart device or the information retrieval over the actual conversation. That's a thing that is called phubbing, from phone snubbing in the literature. So for this work, our focus was on how to provide conversation support, so strengthen the good things that come from technology in conversations, while help to mitigate the problems that arise from that. If we look at the industry, there's one big topic today that everyone's really interested in, and that is personal assistants. Like Siri, like Cortana, like Google Assistant, like Apple Alexa. And what all those personal assistants do is they use something that's called zero-query search. Zero-query search means that the system retrieves information without an actual search query. So the system uses your context, the things that the system knows about you, who you are, where you are, and those things, to retrieve information that the system thinks is relevant for you in the current situation and pushes this information to you. And if you transfer this idea of the zero-query search from one person to multiple persons into conversations, you end up at something that's called ambient voice search. And the idea behind this is that you have a system that constantly records what you're talking about in a conversation and does some machine learning magic to extract topics of this and to provide additional information that is relevant to you. So it's not necessary for individual information retrieval, but the system can do this for you. I have two examples for this. One is the inspiration wall by Andolina et al. From the CNC 2015. They have a system that supports brainstormings or idea generation sessions through recording what you're talking about and posting words or concepts that relate to this on a public display. Or a similar example, the idea expander from Wang et al. That also support brainstorming sessions through posting pictorial stimuli, so pictures that might help you in the brainstorming that are relevant for the context that you're talking about, also on a public display. So we found this concept of ambient voice search very interesting, and we were thinking about how can we move this from public displays to augmented reality and from a shared display for all users to personal displays and personal output that we can do using augmented reality. And therefore, we started with conducting an exploratory study to gain more insights into the design of such a system. Let me talk about this for a minute. We started with individual semi-structured interview sessions with 7 participants, focusing on 2 main research questions. The first one, how can a system effectively support information retrieval in co-located conversations, and what are the requirements for the user interface of such a system? The general idea was that we asked our participants about their memories, their positive and negative memories of using technology and of information retrieval and when it was necessary in different conversation scenarios. And to stimulate this, we asked them about different conversation scenarios that were different in terms of location, objectives, mood, and relationship between the participants of the conversation. We selected 5. The first one was a consultation. So that's what we define as a conversation between persons with different levels of expertise and different levels of information and understanding of a problem domain, for example, a medical consultation. Then we had a meeting scenario between co-workers, so peers with the same level of experience and information. Then we had the authority gradient, which might be also a conversation scenario with the same level of information, but with different levels of information, but with an additional authority gradient, like a situation with an instructor that teaches a trainee. Then we had informal talk, which might be you talking to a friend at a bar, pub. And the last one, we had different intentions, which is a conversation between persons with obviously different intentions, something like a salesperson trying to sell you a new house or something. Let's have a look at the results. From what we found in the study, we identified 3 main areas of results and categorized them as requirements for the user interface. Let me walk through them shortly. The first one is provide unsolicited and real-time service. During the study, we found that one of the major reasons for private information retrieval on smart devices is the shame of not knowing things. People do not want to ask if they don't understand something that they think that they should know. And this was one of the main reasons why they didn't just ask the other person who was talking about something, but just took out their mobile phone and Googled something, some abbreviations, some words, some countries, things like that. That's what we heard from the participants. And as a second thing, participants remembered a lot of situations where information was necessary to continue the conversation. So they needed additional input, and that led to persons taking out their mobile phones looking up this information, but while in the process of looking up this information, slowly drifting away into the interaction with the device. So for this, the first requirement that we found is that a system should provide unsolicited and real-time service, so provide the information when it's necessary, and provide it without the user having to explicitly ask for the information. As a second requirement, we have supporting fluid transition and re-engagement. That's somehow connected to the last point of persons drifting away while interacting with the technology and retrieving information, because participants told us that sometimes you're just so involved with the information and retrieving this information and reading things and looking at things that they felt it hard to come back to the actual conversation. And they just didn't know what the current state of the conversation was, what they were talking about. So therefore, we think that a system should provide means for them to easily come back to the conversation after the process of information retrieval. As a third point, we have selective sharing from the public-private information spectrum. And during the study, we found that information sharing is a very important point for users. They, as I said, they want to share this new cat meme or something with you. But in co-located settings, they found it very complicated, because how do you share information? Either you use some integrated sharing solution from your smartphone, but you won't do this in the in a co-located setting. In a co-located setting, you usually just hand over your device showing the content to another person. But this means you're not only sharing this special content, but you're sharing the whole device, and it's probably just one swipe away from that embarrassing picture from last night's party. So we think it's important that you provide means for very easy and fast sharing of information and just small information bits. So let's come to our system. Based on the results from the study and from the related work, we created CloudBits, our concept. Let's walk into that. We had two main design goals that were support an effective and fun information visualization to mitigate the challenges that we've talked about, and support interaction with the retrieved information during conversations. CloudBits is an augmented reality system for head-mounted displays that supports users through small information bits falling from the metaphorical cloud above the user. These information bits appear based on the topic of the current conversation. So for example, if I'm talking about Brighton, there might appear a map of Brighton, there might appear the weather of Brighton, there might appear places for sightseeing, just depending on the content of the conversation. This includes public information from websites, as well as private information like from my personal emails, my calendar, my pictures, something like that. This private information is only visualized for me, not for everyone else. And I'm allowed, or I can share it with other persons later. Let's have a look. So information is displayed as small information bubbles falling from the top to the bottom. If I don't interact with them, they will hit the ground, and once they hit the ground, they will disappear. If I do interact with them, however, they are pinned to the last position where I have interacted with them, so I can grab them, move them around in the space, put them somewhere. All of this happens in a shared information space, so the position and everything about the items is synchronized over all the users. So if I see something on the table over there, some information, you also see it on this table. And when there's information sharing, I realize this is an old picture. here the information sharing is visualized as this small bubble on the right top. In the newer versions that you'll also see in the video, it's visualized as a colored background for the information bits, whether it's private or shared. As I said, I can grab items and move them around in the space, and the other person will see them on the same position in the space. I can pin the items to positions in the space if I want or need them for later access. If I don't need anything anymore, I grab it, give it a little bit of acceleration and throw it away, and it will disappear. And if I want to access some information, because in the beginning all of them are just showing thumbnails to depict what's inside this bubble. If I want to pop those bubbles and look inside, I grab it and turn my hand upside down and open the content. Let's have a look at some videos because I think it's easier to understand. As I said, it's an AR application that we built using HoloLens. Let's have a look at the general things. In this scene, we're talking about SUI and where it is this year. So some content related to this starts appearing. So like a calendar entry and the weather from Brighton. I might be interested in that, so I grab it and keep it there. Then I can interact with it. For example, I'm interested in the weather, so I grab it and open it. And open it, yes. And I can see the content, and it's better than I expected when going to the UK. And I can remove things by just throwing them away. And then we have sharing, as I said. This is the newer version that has a colored background to indicate whether some information is private or shared. This one is orange, so it's private information, and if I take it and move it to her, I give it over to her and share it with her, so she can also see the content and interact with the content. Let's quickly have a look at the evaluation of our system. We invited 12 participants to our lab and divided them in 6 groups of 2 participants each. We chose the pairs with different relationships, so work colleagues, close friends, spouses, and we focused on 3 research questions. First, if and how people leverage the surrounding space for acquiring and interacting with information. Second, if and how CloudBits provides mutual awareness of activities and eases the re-engagement into the conversation. And third, if and how CloudBits enables selective sharing from the private-public information spectrum. As we wanted to focus on the concepts and the idea behind that, we opted to use a Wizard of Oz study setup. That means that we did not use an ambient voice search engine in the background to transcribe the conversation between the participants and do all this machine learning stuff and extract the topics and so on, but we had everything prepared and had 2 researchers sitting there and letting them appear for the participants. We chose this way because we want to focus, as I said, on the concepts and not on the technical implementation details. What did the participants have to do? Their overarching goal was to plan a vacation trip to some city. We did this 2 times for each pair, for the smartphone, for a smartphone condition and one for the CloudBits condition. The participants had 4 tasks. First, agree on a departure date and length of the trip, depending on their time and their calendars and things like that. Then for the selected time frame, select flights, then select a hotel based on your leftover budget and location of the hotel relative to some sightseeing places. And then, as the last one, select a restaurant for the first night based on the location, leftover budget, and type of food they serve. And then we additionally had one hidden task in which, in both conditions, we imposed one interruption because we told them there was some technical problem with recording, they should wait for 5 minutes to find out how they re-engage after this break into the conversation. Let's have a look at the results. So first thing is that we found that people actually use the available space, the whole available space, to interact with information, and they all really liked it. And when we had a closer look, we found that one thing was, we found over all participants or participant groups was that they built things that we called working zones and storage zones, where they kept information. So working zone where they actually had the information they were currently working at, and storage zones where they kept information that they wanted to keep for later use, not discarded. And while we found those working in storage zones over all groups, the actual layout of those zones was different. So for example, one time it looked like this, having the information they were currently working on one side, the storage zone on another side. For some, it looked like this, having the information you work with directly in front of you and the storage zone somewhere above. Sometimes the storage zone was just on the side, the working zone between you. Sometimes it was two sides. And we even saw this, where the working information was basically a ring around the field of vision between you and the other person. And this is the one thing that we also found for all the groups. You don't want to have information or some augmented stuff between you and someone else when you're talking. So there need to be one path for eye contact, even if it's complicated using today's head-mounted displays. If we add private information to this, we found mainly two behaviors. So one thing we found over all groups is that participants did not mix up private and public information. Private information was all the time separated. Most participants kept the private information somewhere close to themselves, out of the way of the discussion. And we also saw that other participants moved the information far away to the side, but also don't mix up with the public information and the information that both of you are currently working with. Then regarding awareness, in the mobile condition, we saw participants constantly asking for updates from the other person. What are you doing? Did you already see this? Can you show this to me? Things like that. So a lot of overhead in the discussion about this. While in the CloudBits condition, when we saw people trying to engage with the other person and talk to them, they just had a quick look and saw what they are doing, and if they were working on the same things as they were, and then just directly started talking about the stuff the other one was currently doing. We saw that the participants used this shared space and the fact that information was appearing on the same position for all the participants, or for both participants here, for very natural interactions between the participants. So, like, look here, or check this, something like that. That was very natural, and the participants really liked that. Regarding the support for re-engagement, so after this imposed break, when we told them that there was some technical issues, then they came back. For the mobile phone condition, they took their mobile phone and were like, oh, wait, what was I doing? And then they asked themselves and were discussing and redid some of the work for two of the groups. While in the CloudBits condition, we found they came back, had one look at the working zone, and then directly continued with their discussion because they were back to the context. Regarding information sharing, we saw that there are we found that people place themselves or locate themselves in the space to support the information sharing, depending on the condition. So in the mobile phone condition, people most of the time sat next to each other, or for work colleagues had different places in the location, but for sharing, stood up, walked over to the other person, showed them the phone, or if they were sitting next to each other all the time, they would just turn to the sides to work on their own, turn back and showed something. So there was a lot of movement involved. While for the CloudBits condition, so we didn't enforce any positioning in the room. The participants were free to sit wherever they want, to place themselves wherever they want for both conditions. In the CloudBits condition, we found that after playing 2 or 3 minutes with the system, they arranged in some face-to-face setting, and that supported our means for sharing. And they really liked it. That's at least what they told us. Okay, I'm running out of time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me, and I'm open for questions.
Did you have to flip the text? Was it individually to the point of view?
Yes, yes.
So the pointing of an image, the pointing of a, did that cause any problems?
So yes, we're rendering all the information rotated towards each of the persons. So even though maybe the information is here, it's rotated for me, so I can read it. For you, you can read it. No, we did not find any real problems with that, because everything that we did was pretty small, and they only referred to the whole thing and not to details within that thing. That then might lead to problems, but that's nothing that we really saw. But I can imagine this happening if you have bigger things and you want to highlight. No, sorry, I was not allowed to bring the HoloLens.
Did you notice any sort of issues when the participants were interacting with each other in the CloudBits condition? In terms, one thing that sort of came to mind when I was watching that, if I have something in my personal space, I may not be aware of it or forget about it, and I start referring to that, and they have no clue what I'm talking about because I'm pointing over here in space. Any
yes,
help to deal with those?
Yeah, I think the thing that we realized most was people interacting with private information that the other one does not see. This is strange. If you see someone just interacting here and he's doing something, but you don't see what he's doing there. So for the next version, we have a like private display that just tells you he's doing something here, and this is like an email, but not what's the content of the email, but just tells you there is something that he's interacting, and that helps a lot in this situation. So this is the thing that we saw the most. Thank you.